It has set the political space on fire and commentaries from all angles.
Yeah, it is true. So let's spend, let's say, 5 or 10 minutes on it, and then maybe we can move on. So I would invite views, and then we can actually put it into conversation, and then we can move on. So views, who will start first?
Okay, if I may start, I think
Yes, Kofi.
I have 2 points. The first point is that President Mahama wanted someone who doesn't have presidential ambitions in the short term, so that the fellow won't compete with him in case he doesn't win the election this year. So he wouldn't go for a SPO or this guy who was at GMPC, or any of those strong guys who have presidential ambitions. Now, not too political, came into the political scene a bit late, an academic, doesn't have presidential ambition, not that I know of. So I think Mahama did that choice, bearing in mind the 24 contest. That is, in case he's not able to make it this time, or whoever he selects as running mate, overtake him and challenge him for the tickets next year. I think he took that into consideration. And I think the second point is they want to play the gender card, but technically I don't know how that is going to work out for them, because even though the professor is a woman, well, she spent most of her years in academia. She's not a typical foot soldier. She doesn't connect to the grassroots. She hasn't been involved in any women rights or feminism campaign in Ghana. So I don't know how she will connect to the female voter population to achieve that gender card intention. Yeah, these are my preliminary points.
Okay, thank you. Good point. All right, who else, please? Next point. Guys, it can't be Kofi alone, please. Because
Roger is not here in.
Yeah. But this has been one of the topical issues. I mean, in fact, the most dominant.
Yeah.
So you guys cannot stay on the fence. I mean, please, let the conversation go.
Doc.
Yeah.
So I want to start with something that Kofi just said.
Yeah.
In relation to the fact that she hasn't really been very loud on women advocacy. And I came across a video somewhere last night, where she was actually doing that. She has a few videos online. I think they are now uploading most of them, but let's say by close of next week, we should see more of those videos. But I personally think she has quite a number of, she's undertaking, just that it's not something that is there for everybody to see. But now that she's come into the scene, I'm sure giving it a little time, we'll begin to see some of these things. But from the, I see it as the whole gender thing will work for them, in the sense that so I think somewhere last year when the president had this debate, I can't give the details, but I saw a video somewhere last year where the president made a comment that women cannot, in general, the long and short of it is basically he was saying that women are not competent enough to lead.
Who said that?
Oh, I'll send you.
No, the president, the president said women should offer themselves for political positions.
Yeah.
It was an admonition for women to come on board. He was saying, like, women should also make a move. Even though there's affirmative action, we want them in politics and all that. They will also have to be interested in getting, because it's like forcing a horse to the riverside. You can't force it to drink.
Yeah.
So a woman should show the initial interest, but it was misconstrued, and NDC guys went out to do propaganda with it.
Right.
But I don't see anything wrong with what the president said. I think it was in Ethiopia also.
Okay.
That women should come on board. They should get on board politically. Because if you are not interested in the first place, then
You cannot.
I mean, how can you?
Right.
You know, if you are not interested in politics yourself, how can anybody help you? People like Esla are doing well because they had the initial interest, and of course, their parties have given them the opportunity, you know, to also excel. But if the interest is not there, what can anybody else do to make you, I mean, a politician? Just because you're a woman.
Good point. All right, Abdul.
Yes, Doc, good evening and good evening to my colleagues.
Good evening, Abdul.
Good evening.
Yeah, I joined earlier on, but I was not really following until now. But I got your drift, Doc. I think you were requesting for us to make some comments on the choice of the running mate by the NDC. Yes, for me, I think it's a strategic choice. I think the party has thought deeply into making that choice. Of course, it is expected that political opponents, if you like, the governing MPP and then other political parties would make the argument that the opposition NDC is perhaps seeking to gain advantage using the gender card. Of course, in politics, anything that you have to do to win is part of it. We all watched Sarah Palin's nomination and how it all it came about.
Yeah.
Now, just observe. I have been monitoring since yesterday, and I believe all of us are monitoring. I have seen the response from various political divides and important personalities in various political parties. And for me, I think the drift has been taken away from actually discussing the real issues about the running mate, what she brings on board. For me, that is what I've observed. It's been taken away, and it appears more or less like political opponents are really looking out for more or less personality attacks and also attacking the gender card because they are aware that whatever it is, it might give some form of an advantage to the opposition party. It might. So they're making comments to suggest like, well, she cannot do it, she's not good enough, I mean, so forth and so on. I just listened to the majority leader in parliament. And for me, some of these comments are not the best. I mean, because, and I've heard some other people say she's not been in frontline politics for long. Please, let's all go back and listen to some of these things. His Excellency, the current Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, let's all be honest, let's all be real. Let's get back to 2008, before Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia was nominated to the ticket. Where was he? We all know he was an economist at the Bank of Ghana, and then when he left, he went back to academia and so forth and so on. In the MPP itself, if you recall, during that period, there was also some hue and cry amongst some of them, of course, not everyone, but some of them, of course, asked questions. Who is he? Where is he coming from? That is expected. In NDC today, some NDC stalwarts has also raised questions. So that is expected. That is understandable. When you go back to the late Professor Mills, if you recall, the period that J.J. Rawlings nominated Professor Mills, I read a document that suggested that, I can't remember exactly how long it was to the election, but it suggested that the period between when J.J. Rawlings nominated Professor Mills and the election was not also that much. Professor Mills was also a professor in an academia. He was not known. He was not a politician. So it is only natural that politicians generally and opponents of the opposition National Democratic Congress will make suggestions to suggest that she's not a well-known politician, she's not a grassroots member, she's not out there, and so forth and so on. But what we should be discussing is what value that she brings on the ticket. And I think that if I was a strategist and to make a comment to the ruling government, I think I would tap them at the back and tell them, hey, let's pause on the way we're going and ask ourselves what it is that she's bringing on board to the opposition party for which we can counteract them. But the nature of their arguments for me, for now, maybe it's early days yet. And maybe it's also a strategy to unsettle her, which is also acceptable and which is also there in politics. That is my initial comment, though.
Excellent.
So, Abdul, you answered your question. You don't expect MPP, for instance, to put out the SWOT analysis of Professor Nana Okuajima in the political in the media, do you? So I'm not sure the party will just sit aloof without doing those assessments and analysis. But of course, those are strategic issues.
I've heard you. So what do you make of my comments?
Yes, and I also wanted to say that the attack on the prof has been on her record at education, but no, I've not heard or seen anybody attack her personally.
Kofi, let me listen to Doc. I wanted Doc to make a comment on my comments.
Let me answer you before.
But I've not asked you a question.
That's right. I mean, good submissions.
Kofi, I understand. I wanted Doc to make some comment on my list so that I'll get some perspective, and then that's what I'm saying.
I think, I mean, all of you have made fantastic submissions. Now, what I want to actually bring our conversation back to is about, one, whether you think the search processes, all right, and of course, we don't know, but there had been some rumors about the kind of search processes that they went through and the rationale that actually supported her choice. Now, if you listen to those conversations and then we, link it, or we actually look back at the, documentary that we watched, what are some of the things that actually strike you? Whether similarities or differences?
So the first thing I noticed is that personally, I think she's not ready for it, personally. And the way the attacks...
you have to support it. Why do you think so?
So I came across a video yesterday where she was being interviewed, and she was being asked questions in relation to her performance at the ministry. Mm-hmm. And you could tell that she didn't see the question coming. And the way she answered the question, you could generally tell that it took her by surprise. She was shocked. She didn't know what
that would have been one of the most anticipated questions, isn't it?
Yes. And the other thing too is, for now, maybe it's too early to say, but for now, I think NDC is not telling her story. I think that is another thing to. I've also noticed that the NDC is not, because I feel, okay, from my personal point of view, before coming out to say this is running mate, you should already have a story ready to put out there, because now it's like the opposition, the party in power is telling the story for the ordinary person, because no one is telling her story. No one actually, to the mass majority, we don't know much of her. So I feel she's not, from my point of view, she's not really prepared for it, and it's very glaring.
Okay, but there had been I've seen some kind of artwork that actually sum up, her experiences, her track record, etc. in the media, isn't it? I even saw some tweets coming from City FM and so many other places, which supposedly was actually put out by the NDC. Okay, but of course, that's a submission. Who else, please? Who else? From what we've heard, and then comparison.
What exactly about the search process that wanted us to really?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the search processes for Sarah Palin, all right, in the document, when we actually, saw it, they talked about, whether her background in terms of, her family and the family connection to that independent political organization, or her husband's connection, whether it was researched, whether Sarah Palin's policy credentials were looked into critically. That is, her understanding and articulation of policy, credentials were actually looked into well. Whether her performance, as far as Alaska was concerned, as a governor, was actually critically, scrutinized, and so many other factors that, and of course, whether her belief, all right, were properly scrutinized. We had those things in the narrative, isn't it, in the documentary that we watched. And I'm saying that when you compare those conversations and then the rumors that we've heard that NDC actually went through, which Kofi yourself, you have alluded to one, that President Mahama was trying to look for somebody who has naturally got, ambition. Do we see similarities or do we see differences? And what do you think, as a strategist, what are some of the things that you would want or you'd have loved to actually investigate more on it?
Well, from the NDC's point of view, I don't think they would accept that the professor's performance was abysmal at the education sector. Other than that, me as a politician from the opposite side, I think her record, there are so many gaps in her record as education minister, which is going to be the main base attack on her candidature on their tickets. But of course, they also tout their education achievements and think they did very well there with some of the things they did. So I don't know how that would have affected her choice. But if I was an independent consultant looking at the educational issues, during her time as head of the ministry, cancellation of allowances, payment of 3 months arrears instead of 3 years arrears, and all these things which became national political issues, even campaign issues. Some of them even became campaign issues, like the allowances, for instance. Or the other side, you could also say maybe it was her government policy, her government's education policy, and probably not her own policy or position on those matters. Either than that, I think those issues, those education issues, her record at the education ministry are issues they should have considered well before choosing her, because that is going to be the main basis of attack on her candidature. That is why I wanted to correct up to that. Of course, there's been attacks on her, but it's been more on her record at the education ministry and not her personal life, or the fact that she's a woman and all that. I don't know if they also considered her political experience and exposure and maturity. But as Abdul said, Ghana has a history of bringing professionals and people from academia to be vice presidential candidates and warm themselves into politics gradually. So I think the professor may also be one of those. Because even Elijah Ali Muhammad was a businessman. But Mia wasn't a politician. Professor Muhammad was an academic. But they all became full-grown politicians later. So let's see how that works out also. Yeah.
But Kofi, let me ask you one question. Don't you think having only examined her role as a minister would have been one of the most shortest search party processes ever, given that she's been a vice chancellor, she's been chair of a lot of global boards, she's actually, obviously been in Cape Coast, lived in Cape Coast for majority or greater part of her life. Do you think that those were not part of the search criteria?
But that's the other thing I forgot to add. I think they're also trying to play that fancy card, which NDC has been using to win elections. They did it with Fata Mills, they did it with Misata, and they've gone there again. And anytime Central Region votes for a particular party, they win elections, just like Greater Accra. I don't know how well this professor will connect with the region. If she does connect well, like Misata and the Mills did, then it's going to be a huge problem for we in MPP. Because if Central Region rally behind her, and they get the central votes, then that can disturb us politically. But that will depend on their political strategy and how well she will connect. Is she a Cape Coast person? She's from Commander. She worked in Cape Coast. Is she somebody who was only at a faculty or department working from there? She closes and goes home, and so doesn't have any political connection in the region. Between now and December, how well can they market her to the central folks as somebody who is one of them to get those votes? So I think the second point, which I forgot, in addition to the gender card, is the central region or the fancy factor, which NDC has been using in previous election. I think they want to use that to get the central region votes. Yeah.
Okay. Now, you mentioned something about her connectedness, not being sure about her connectedness to the central region itself, and you were making assumptions about her own participation, political participation. Don't you think that, or do you think that is a factor or not? Because if you look at a person's constituency connection, now there are differentials between in-party or intra-party competition and a national election. Why do you think her connection to local party constituency should actually be a determinant of a connection to the broader central region, really?
So if she is probably at Mark 0 now in terms of her connectedness to the region, then it will depend on how well the NDC will market it, between now and election day. Because you can't just say this person is from the region, so it is automatically going to translate into votes. It depends on how she's positioned politically to the region. What kind of engagement is it going to have with the women fishmongers and all these people who
Hello?
determine, I say, fact, I don't know how. Yes, Doc, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Prof was a lecturer at, to create that center. How did they do it with Amisata, who was also a bit reserved, as a former governor and also as a former academic? How were they able to do it? If they're able to do a similar thing with Prof. Nana Opoku-Agyeman, I think her current connection level in terms of political activity would be a factor. So I think I will agree with you that current situation in terms of how she interacts with the political constituency of the central region won't be a factor as much as how well they will position him or position her in the region.
Okay. Okay. Well, we lost you a little bit, but can you guys hear me?
Yes, Doc.
Okay. All right, good. So who else has a point to make? We're looking at the basis for selection and the search criteria, and then that we have heard in comparison with what we know about the Palin situation.
Okay, Doc, can I make this comment?
Yeah, Abdul, yeah.
So, Doc, with reference to her nomination or her announcement vis-a-vis the Palin situation, what struck me first when the announcement was made was the cacophony of responses that heralded it. Sitting in my office and my observation across various media platforms, from the from the traditional media space to the social media space, and the fact that it had trended over some time, over some period, and the immediate response to which the governing party also had to make some response to the nomination. That got me thinking, and so it got me to look at it from the video we watched in respect of Sarah Palin. The moment that she was announced, and the response that heralded her announcement, or the party response to her, and her subsequent demeanor, response, and talks to the media. So basically, so far, I have not heard the professor herself make any public comments. I don't know if she has done so, but in the coming days, I am looking forward to see her public engagements vis-a-vis, I mean, the interactions that she would have with the media, and how all these things will play out.
Okay, excellent. Great point. Thanks. Now, let me ask you guys another question. If you were the one who was at the helm of that search party, making decisions, and you had settled on Professor Jenan Opoku-Agyeman. Now, in comparison with the search team that actually looked for Sarah Palin, who were now briefing McCain. Remember when he was in the bath and then they came out, they were briefing him, and they were telling McCain some of her credentials and why they chose her. If you were to say the same for the professor, what are some of the things that you would say were the fundamental reasons for your choosing her to President Mahama? If you were briefing President Mahama that you have found someone who you think would fit the ticket, what are some of the things that you would say are the reasons why you're choosing?
Okay, Prof. Doc, some of the things that I have gathered, perhaps it could be pedestrian, I'm not so sure, but some of the things I have gathered as being the reasons is, one, the fact that we have our current vice president who is touted to be a strong economist, and he has over the years spoke on the economy, and he has always used data and so forth and so on to discuss the economy and so forth and so on. And so run up to the nomination, you will have realized that there had always been calls and there have been concerns about the fact that, in fact, I've heard some people in the political space make reference to the fact that the NDC was delaying the nomination of the the nomination of the running mate, because they were searching for someone who equally have strong economic credentials to be able to match with the current vice president. But what I understand is that the party intentionally decided to drift away from that discussion of economy or economics, as it may be, so as not to have that kind of straight away frontal attack or frontal arguments between their running mate and then the current vice president. That is one thing that I understand.
Yeah.
The next thing is the obvious gender card, which we cannot run away from it. Yeah. It's absolutely a fact. Yeah. So that gender card, because if you observe, and so far since the nomination, and I stand to be corrected, most of the things that I have read via social media and traditional media, and like I said earlier on, some of the comments made even by senior members of the ruling party seek to suggest or seek to make reference to the fact that, I mean, the NDC, and for that matter, the presidential candidate wants to take advantage of her gender base. You know, so they've started, I mean, some of the comments they have made seek to, as it may be, target the gender card. So absolutely, for me, I think that it's a fact. It's one of the key things that they will have considered, because, I mean, some feminists and other groups who think that, I mean, this is time for them to, as it may be, come along, join the bandwagon to see one of their own or something. I don't know, but we all wait to see how it will play out. But those are some of the things that I think were considered.
Okay, excellent. Who else want to expand on that? Now, okay, before somebody comes in, Abdul, can you expand on the gender card? How do you see that play out? I mean, obviously, when you say the gender card, I
Yes.
can understand that you mean
Okay, so
women, but can you
yes,
expand on it and let's see
yes.
what will
So
be your
so far,
telling,
yes. Okay, Doc. So far, I have been observing all day. I work alongside observing some of the things on various media space. So far, I've observed that a couple of individuals who, quote unquote, I mean, have usually touted themselves. I'm referring to women who have previously touted themselves as, if you like, neutralists, or who don't talk politics and so forth and so on. Some I know, some from a distance, some just on social media. I've seen some people, some of them made comments. I've seen some women groups who have also made comments about the fact that, I mean, the NDC have exalted women. The NDC have seen the importance of women. The NDC is beginning to realize that women can also do the job. And I've seen a couple of, like I said, women groups and some individual women who are all posting, who are kind of gender activists and feminists, quote unquote, who are making the argument that the nomination of the good professor suggests that a woman is closer to becoming the president of the country. And for me, I feel that that was even more or less that call for the response from the majority leader when he spoke this evening to one of the media stations. He said, if I paraphrase him, what he said was that the woman is a good woman by all standards. That bet, assuming, God forbid, assuming tomorrow President Mahama is no more, or for one reason or the other, he cannot act as the president, that he doesn't see the woman as a presidential material. He doesn't see the woman being able to sit in as a president. So I think this comment was made around 5:30 or so. But within that period, I've seen a lot of comments on it on Twitter, on Facebook, and other platforms. I've seen women activists taking the majority leader on for that comment, because they are feeling that this nomination is an opportunity to see the first president, the first woman president in Ghana, perhaps in the long run. So for me, that is why I said the gender card is being played here. There are a lot of neutral people. There are a lot of people that usually in Ghana we call the floating voters. Of course, some of them are also women. In fact, most of them, according to one research that I read from CDD, I think was it 2012, I'm not sure of their latest one, but 2012, I read a report from CDD that suggests that close to 60% of the floating voters in Ghana were women. I mean, one, because of the fear that, they are afraid to go out and vote. They feel that they are not even considered in the political limelight, because they feel that, so a whole lot of factors. Yeah. So with a woman now nominated to be the vice presidential candidate, it kind of erects some kind of, attention. Yes, so basically that is the angle that I see it in respect of the gender card. No.
Okay, great. Who else? We're discussing, if you were the head of the search party and you had found this woman and you are telling Mahama why they should choose this woman, what are some of the attributes that you could report to Mahama? Just as we saw Steve and his team reporting to McCain, as the underpinnings why he should choose Professor Jane Opoku-Agyeman. Yeah,
No, I want to add that the professor doesn't have as much issues as the other potential candidates whose names.
Okay.
we heard I was more, there were some
Yeah. Kofi, we're losing you.
If you reposition yourself,
Kofi,
Sir Kofi.
the word I can say.
Yeah, reposition. We could hardly hear you.
Is it?
Yeah, say it again.
Okay, then another person can.
Kofi, drop the call and call back. I mean, drop it and then and start all over. Perhaps it will come. Kofi also.
Kofi, it's karaoke, as if you are karaoke. Hello. All right. Who else, please, so that when Kofi comes, you can. Who else? All right.
Hello, Doc. Is it better?
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay. So I was saying that she hasn't been damaged politically in terms of scandal. So if you're looking at a clean candidate,
Yeah.
then that favors her, because I remember Kennedy Japan saying he was just waiting for Mahama to name his vice presidential candidates, and then he will bring out the issues on that person. I'm yet to hear him speak on Prof. Nana Okuko-Agyeman, but I wonder if he will get any corruption issues or scandals about.
Yeah.
Hey.
Okay.
So you wouldn't judge the professor because of the comparison. We have considered that before.
Okay.
Choosing her. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, excellent. Yeah. Who else has something to say before I come in? Who else has something to say? Yeah, Benny.
So one of the things that has already been said that I'll just re-emphasize is the fact that she would appeal to most women, and the fact that if you're looking at the numbers, women are more than men in this our country, and hence and also like my brother said, we have lots more floating voters than people who are actually stick to one. For instance, I spoke to a friend somewhere this afternoon, and she was telling me that the fact that the NDC has brought in a female candidate, she will definitely vote, not because she's voting for NDC, but the fact that they have a female candidate. And the other thing too, I feel will play in her favor is the fact that she comes from Gehe, and knowing the fact that the old girls like to support their own and they like to push their own, they would also put in some support and make sure that, because they would want to have the narrative that the first female vice president came from their school, and hence they would want to push, yes, to make it happen, because she's already been the first female vice chancellor.
Yeah.
So this on top is just an icing on the cake, for lack of a better word.
Okay, excellent. All right, now let me come in with my submissions, obviously to add up to what you guys have proposed. Now, my position is similar to what you guys have said, but I felt that perhaps you could expand it in a little bit more. And I feel that the NDC, perhaps maybe they actually still, preparing, but perhaps must expand the reach of, positioning or the segmentation. One thing that is clear, which all of you have said, is about gender and the representation of gender, on the ballot. Now, don't forget, when it comes to segmentation, we are actually looking at how possible can we target certain voter blocks with the attributes of the party, attributes of the candidate, attributes of the policies, in order that we could actually reach critical mass of people. So in this case, and remember, when you talk about sets of voters or blocks of voters, each set or each segment has its own attributes and therefore their own expectation, all right? So if you take the gender issue, perhaps you could actually subcategorize into adult female and young female, all right? Now, you could almost as well categorize the young female into young, females in school or young females out of school. Or you could even talk about the middle class young women. You can talk about the informal sector, women, and then of course, the young women voters or young female voters. Are you following me up until this point?
Yes, Doc. Yes,
Okay.
Doc.
So by that definition, then the question is, how do you make a proposition for Professor Jane, Ajiman, to actually meet the adult female voter class? All right, let's say the adult. When I say the adult, maybe let's use like the informal ones. How do you make a proposition for her to meet the expectation of the middle class women? How do you make the proposition for her to meet young people, young women of aspirations? All right. Now, these three strands or segments of voters all are looking at a woman candidate, but from different perspectives, which means that your proposition for the young voter is about inspiration, is about role model, is about the idea that she probably could represent you and be your advocate in opening up opportunities at school for you and after school for you. All right. So that's the proposition for the young aspiring or young voters who are perhaps in secondary school, in the universities, etc. And that's the proposition. Now, second proposition is for the middle class young woman, like the corporate, you have your own mates, your own colleagues. And what is the proposition for those ones? It's about conversation on equal pay, equal work conditions, proposition about, leave, like maternity leave, proposition about promotional issues, all right? Because we know that there are so many promotion issues at workplaces that actually go against young corporate women, as opposed to men. That's the proposition. The next proposition is about the mothers, and so found in the marketplaces. What's the proposition? The proposition is that this is a woman who, through her toil, had actually handed or has held positions like a vice chancellor before, and that also goes to the middle class women. And having actually headed a university, a major university, means that she had to handle chauvinistic men, all right, because nowhere is so top heavy, so masculineal than a university campus where you have professors men, and then a professor woman is supposed to head over them. That's a very tough sell. So you're actually telling these middle class people that, look, yes, you're a woman, but you can compete favorably with your male counterparts and even achieve more. like I've done, first vice chancellor, and then first woman, vice, candidate. These actually connect, and it gives the older women in the informal sector that you have to invest in your child. And like me, your child can actually get there, all right? And give them that belief that, and that investment, I will make sure that I'm your advocate. And so that investment will not go waste. I will bring out policies that could actually help you, help these young people, achieve that aspiration. So that is one proposition. Now, the second proposition is not to define the candidature as a gender candidature, but rather define it as a diversity candidature. And the reason I'm saying that is that in most cases, when we actually pitch gender debates, it is actually a diversity debate, which means that every subcategory of people who are underrepresented or who are unrepresented, the representation of a woman at a higher place actually equates to the representation of those underserved, underrepresented people at the higher place. Why? Because women tend to actually champion some causes that men do not actually champion. All right? And that they will speak to issues that not only bother on women, but on other subcategories of underrepresented people at the higher table. So my proposition is that the definition of her candidature is even limited if you have to see it from a gender perspective, and reach out to a more diverse, proposition that she's absolutely in a position to advocate for disability rights and disability potentials, all right, in as much as she advocates for what? Gender propositions. I hope you can hear me right. I hope I have not lost you guys. Hello?
No,
Yeah.
you can hear you.
Okay. Okay, excellent. So for me, when you are pitching her to President Mahama and then talking about the attributes that could actually underpin her compelling candidature, from that perspective, you want to move the conversation from gender to diversity, to inclusivity, so that you can bring on board other diverse, people. Now, the next proposition is about, obviously, her, fraternity with academia. And that one is clear, which means that you cannot leave the academia, and then leave the students, all right, or the lecturers and leave the students. So they are sort of actually fitted in there. That I understand because I am a vice chancellor and I know exactly what concerns students as well as the teaching faculty. And so that's the proposition. Now, the next proposition is about her connectedness to the central and possibly to the Western region. This is someone who, since I think 1980 something, apparently after her, she's been at UCC throughout her life. Now, what does that mean? As Kofi said, we don't know her connectedness to the to the grassroots of the people. But don't forget, this is a national election. And certainly, having lived in Cape Coast for a greater part of her life means that she has an absolute understanding, perhaps on paper, as we know, of what actually constrains the central region, and make the argument that she can understand them better and can actually represent them better. Now, of course, when you move beyond that, then you're talking about the people in Western region, or those people around the coastal belt of the Western region and of the central region. Now, has she got the opportunity or the potential to toss up those central region in particular to the NDC? As Kofi said, obviously the answer is it's possible. That is, if she's able to articulate her connectedness and able to give those people hope that this time around it would be third time lucky, that we've had Professor Mills, we have Emisata. This time around it's going to be third time lucky, whether she can actually make that proposition. And all these factors that we're talking about are with a big if, yeah? Because I keep saying that there is no way your dad will contest somebody that you would go and vote for the stranger instead. You would vote your dad. The only time that you would not vote your blood in a related person or person who has a proximity to you is when your dad has demonstrated absolute irresponsibility towards you throughout the course of your life, that you wouldn't look twice to vote against him. But if your dad hadn't actually demonstrated that absolute irresponsibility towards you, it would be, it would even baffle the stranger whom you're actually voting for, and could even ask you whether your commitment or your promise that you're going to vote for them is genuine. Because proximity actually equates trust. The idea that Kofi, who is my friend, is in the top hierarchy of this party, surely I must get something from there. It's a simple question. You can ask somebody, why do you believe in this party so much? Oh, my uncle is there. Why do you think that your uncle is there? So the person has every confidence because of the proximity that he has with some key people inside. In this case, the knowing or the connectedness of that individual is translated into trust. And so it is always difficult for you to think that tribesmen will not vote for their own. And as I said, the only caveat is when that their own had displayed absolute irresponsibility. In this case, absolute irresponsibility means non-connectedness in the society. We don't actually know you. We haven't even seen you before. How can we trust you? If that caveat is not there, then surely she could actually toss up, central region, to the NDC. Am I clear on that? Do you guys agree with me, or you have a different view? I can listen to you.
Doc, I think some of the points may have disadvantages. For instance, her connection to academia. I think yesterday also I saw some points of academic or educational matters that people think she didn't handle well. And one was book and research allowance. As a former vice chancellor who got the opportunity to become education minister, what did she do about lectures research allowance, which they were asking for? What did she do for students? Allowances and all those things. Did she use that opportunity as education minister to connect to this constituency of hers, which is academia, which includes both faculty and students? If she didn't do that, how is he going to leverage that positively this time? So I think that may also be a disadvantage to her because of her past as education minister and how she handled some policy issues in the past. And that has been part of the attacks, missiles the MPP is using on her. Actually.
Okay, fantastic point. Now, let me ask you guys a follow-up question. So assuming that you are a strategist and your candidate is Jenana Opoku-Agyeman, and these factors that we are saying that underpin compelling, story for her, but happens that, per what Kofi said, that connectivity when she had the first opportunity wasn't there. As a strategist, how do you actually convert that into a positive narrative? Or how do you change, let me say it differently. How do you persuade that constituents' minds in order that they could actually look forward to her once more, as opposed to looking at the previous relationship? How are you going to do that as a strategist? I hope you guys can hear me.
I think it's going to be a daunting task.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a daunting. The only difference this time is that you are going to be second in command.
Kofi, don't say daunting task. I'm saying that you are a strategist, so it's a question. As a strategist, because you are a strategist.
I'm still speaking as a politician.
No, don't speak as a politician. I want you to speak as a strategist. So here's the case with your candidate. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I think one way she can approach that is to say now she has more power.
Mm-hmm.
Probably as a member of the previous government, she was a minister taking instructions with regard to resources, allocation of resources and all that.
Yeah.
But now she's only the second in command. She's just the second in command, so she has a better say in their manifesto promises, their policies, and once she is leading the campaign with the candidate, with Mahama, then if she promises something, the responsibility, the level of responsibility is higher. So she can say that for now, she's going to be vice president. So she's going to ensure that resources are provided to do probably something that she didn't do in the past, or ensure that education minister will do this ABC for academia, education minister will do ABC for students. Because this time around, she is going to be head of economic management. I don't know if they are going to maintain that status quo, if they mean. But basically, she's going to have more powers to be able to influence policies in her sector more than she had previously.
Okay, so you said that. So you've said that, and somebody raises the rebuttal that how do we trust you on that? That you would deliver what you have said, or how do we trust you that yes, those days you were not, in power or were not close to that powerful, but now, what are some of the things that you could use as a source of evidence to gain back that trust? I hope you guys are following it. We are now putting ourselves as strategists to build the gaps. Yeah, Kofi, if you want to proceed.
That is a bit that is a bit difficult, but all I can say is that let's say in typical marketing plans, you do evaluation and control.
Yeah.
And those who provide the resources, management has a lot of stake when it comes to the provision of the resources and also the evaluation. Because sometimes they do supervision. So since the good professor is going to be second in command and she is going to be at cabinet to probably, she can even say probably because of her background as an educationist, she's going to take those ministries. It will depend on the kind of structure the government will be.
Yeah.
But if the president, for instance, gives some ministries oversight of certain ministries to the vice president, then because she's an educationist who has been former education minister and she's going to have the supervisory responsibility or oversight responsibility for that. Excellent. Then she could say that, well, I'm going to be ultimately responsible because the education minister is even going to report to me. Just as in the current scheme of things in MPP, the finance minister, trade and others report to the head of the economic management team, who is the vice president technically. So he has ultimate oversight over certain things. For instance, when it comes to digitization, the current vice president is in charge. So even though the president sits in cabinet, when they go to cabinet, when it comes to digital issues and economic issues, everything goes to the vice president. I don't know if the strategists could use that oversight role to give reasons why she will ensure those things will be done in the future.
Okay, excellent. Guys, it is the notes that we're doing. That's why I push some of the questions so that you guys can see the perspectives. Who else want to add to what Kofi has said? Yeah? Mohammed? Mohammed, are you with us?
Oshodi.
Okay. Mr. Zuma.
Okay, I think Mohammed's mic is on now. Oh.
Okay.
Or you switch it on.
Yeah. Nah, I think he did. Okay. Now, Mr. Zuma.
Yeah, Doc.
Any proposition? Now you are in the seat of a strategist, so I expect you guys to give me. So the question on the board is that, yes, she's gone back to her other constituent, which is academia, and she's telling them that now she has power, so she would do better than when she was an education minister. Now somebody raises a rebuttal that, how can we trust you on that? And what makes you think that now you can do better? What are some of the things that as a strategist you can also use to rebut that and then perhaps give evidence?
Yeah, Doc, I think that having risen to that high position as a vice chancellor. Yes.
Excellent. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't forget that when you are building the profile for your candidate, profile expands completely 360 degrees to the extent that if you listen to Sarah Palin's dig that he gave to Obama, that she was also a community, or she was I think in our parlance, an assemblyman, only that hers involved actual responsibilities than Obama's community worker that he was. Are you with me? And so that tells you that when we are building the portfolio or the profile of a candidate, and there is a gap that somebody is actually pushing, there's a rebuttal somebody is actually pushing on one of the candidate's history, do not forget you have a 360-degree profile that you can use any of them to counter that particular, limitation. So the point that Mr. Azuma is saying is, so once they have actually raised that, how can we trust you that because you have power now, you would actually perform than when you were educational minister? Perhaps the reference point is when she was a chancellor, vice chancellor at UCC, and say that, of course, when I was at UCC and when I had the power, the evidence is clear for you to see. These were my track record. This is what I did. This is what I did. So you are seeing that she's now moving away from her immediate past, history, to when she was a vice chancellor, which she had utmost power, in comparison with now that she's going to be, a vice candidate, which she's going to have some power, as opposed to when she was a minister. So don't forget that as a strategist, you have a 360 profile of your candidate, none of which is limited. Each of them could be used to counter certain arguments. Are you with me? Are you guys following me?
Yes, Doctor. Yeah.
So the vice chancellorship at UCC is crucial to actually provide the evidence that they could actually turn it around. All right, thank you. Now, so
quick one.
Yeah, Benny.
Just before we continue, so what if she didn't do much there for it to be shown? She wasn't able to achieve much.
Okay, then what was the reason why you couldn't achieve? You see, as a strategist, when you build the profile, and that's why I keep telling people that, you know, by the way, you said something this afternoon that if CPP was given to me, would I run it? All right. And I
Yes.
said, why not? For me, I believe that as a strategist, any case that you'll be given, you're like a lawyer, all right? Any case that you'll be given, your job is to identify the strength and the weaknesses and use or convert that strength to actually fill the weaknesses. So the question is, to what extent do you transfer Nana or Nana Opoku Ajiman's other attributes onto the other side of the story that could actually plug the hole? That's what you're looking at. So the transferable skills or the transferable attribute must come in here. That if you were told that her track record was not as good in her past job as well, then as a strategist, what you're looking at for, what were the reasons why those, track record were not good? And how do you counter that with other, compelling stories? Was there existing policies of, misogyny, or was there certain structures of misogyny? And then use the current situation as that is why you think this position as vice president candidate could help you change some of these entrenched structures in our system. Are you with me?
Yes, Doc.
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, I think that as a strategist, your lenses must be deep. Your lenses must go beyond the extent of the politician. And you remember when Kofi was speaking, and he said that this would be tough, and I challenged that no, he's no longer a politician, he's a strategist. Because as a politician, he would actually see it as that and said the gap is closed, so she will struggle. But as a strategist, that is not your purview. As a strategist, any case is a good case for you. How do you actually, build your case around and then go and defend it, just like a lawyer would do? I don't know whether you guys agree with me or not.
Yes.
We do.
Okay, good. So some of the lessons that we've learned from this scenario is that it bears resemblance to Sarah Palin case, all right? Now, one of the cases that Sarah Palin's case they were looking at is how does the candidate counter Obama's celebrity status, all right? So in this case, you see that the Nana's pick actually looks somewhere like this situation, that Bawumia had become the reference point. Now, the departure is that perhaps in NDC's mind, if we show difference, all right, from Bawumia, who had become the reference point for the selection of vice candidature, but that difference is a compelling proposition, perhaps we can shift attention from Bawumia to her, all right? And from all indications, for this short period of time, you realize that, of course, we haven't gone into the nitty-gritty of the campaign where maybe we're going to find Sarah Palin moments like she's unable to articulate certain policy issues, or she's unable to inspire in her articulation of the issues, or she's unable to relate to the daily practices or the daily, sufferings of the ordinary people, and as a result, start to bore people, just like Sarah Palin's one-to-one started boring people. Unless we come to that, the media engagement that we have seen yesterday and today suggests that that star power had somehow been achieved in a very short period of time, all right? Now, the scrutiny would then follow whether that star power could actually be maintained, just like we saw in Sarah Palin's case. All right. So the idea was, or what we're seeing now, we don't know NDC's idea, but what we're seeing now is that you see what is a contrast from the earlier model, which is Baumia, to such a model, and then we're seeing similar, situation with, Sarah Palin. So remember that Sarah Palin, just like Nana Opoku-Agyeman, was not as professorial as Obama, that her credentials and things can actually wow you and say, wow, all right? In Nana Opoku-Agyeman's case, the credentials would wow you, but we don't know her in the context of Bawomia's rhetorical power to say, wow. So currently, as we speak, people are now waiting to see the second part of her. Of course, the first part of her is her credentials. Immediately the name suggests to you, all right? Professor. Once you hear professor, what do you say? Of course, you think she's got a pedigree, all right? What we don't know is the detail in the pudding. So when it comes to the eating of the pudding, then we'll come to affirm what the professorial name actually depicts, whether indeed she is the professor, or she may be said about that she doesn't actually even fit the professor. I don't know whether I'm making sense. Am I making sense?
You are, Doc. Yeah, we are following.
Okay. So I think that is what we can see from the relationship between the Sarah Palin, campaign, what do you call, documentary, and what we're actually observing now. Now, let me go back to the slide, and I think you can see, I think this is where we got to other theories of attention from the previous. Let me just go here. You remember we did these ones, all right? I think the early part of the lecture, didn't we? We did these ones, all right? So now let's look at some of the theories that come to mind when we're discussing political marketing. So Liz Marshman talks about POP, SOP, and MOP, which is what we call the comprehensive political marketing strategy framework, all right? The comprehensive political marketing framework. Now, according to Liz Marshman, a POP party is the party that has the characteristics of the product-oriented firm. And POP is product-oriented parties or production-oriented parties, all right? Now, the product-oriented firm from the marketing theory says that these are firms that put emphasis on producing quality product. Now, the quality product here refers to the organization's own standards and definitions of what is quality, all right? So they master the art of producing the most quality product. So here is somebody who actually, weaves kente, and he's perfected the art of weaving kente. So they weave the kente from their own perspective, from their own artistic view, and then from their own, technical competence view. Now, the color choices is chosen by them because they believe that for you to have a stunning, compelling kente, there must be certain color combinations that actually makes it stand out. So they are selecting red, they select blue, they select yellow, and they said, if you want to have a very perfect kente, this is what you do, all right? Now, they go ahead to determine the size, and they say, as for kente, it has to be 10 feet, it has to be 15 feet, it has to be this, because when you wrap it, it's supposed to have some excesses that would actually sweep on the floor, etc. So they weave the kente in that perspective. So the product orientation concept is that the organization focuses on product excellence. And so they have mastered the art of the production, the art of the creativity or the creation of the product. And then when they're done with the product, that's where they bring it out to the people and say, look, we are Bonre, we manufacture fantastic kente, and this is what we've done. Come and buy. I hope you're following me. Now, that's the product-oriented firm. Now, the product-oriented political party, which is the POP, is the one who is firmly hinged on their ideological position or belief. And they believe that key in political communication, political campaigning is about what do you think are your core ideologies and how do you actually let people believe in that ideology and bring them on board? Which means the POP uses their ideological position to develop policies that they think would solve the national issue. So the policies, attributes, the policies duration, the policies scope, etc., are all determined by the POP with their ideological lenses as the foundation to guide them in that production of policy. Now, again, when it comes to the selection of the candidate, the POP is using the same ideological lens to say, who do you think that, or what are the qualities in political candidate that the people would need? And they're actually saying, as for a political candidate, you're supposed to be very articulate in your policy positions, all right? You are supposed to actually have a self-belief in the policies themselves. You're supposed to do that, you're supposed to do that. And based on that, or you're supposed to be firebrand, or you're supposed to be, based on that, they select the candidate from their own frame. And then, of course, the party's own organization is purely ideological oriented. So the party organizes people. And by organization, it means that when they go into appealing to people, they are talking to people about who they are, what they can do for you, etc. That's how the POP behaves. That is product-oriented party. That's how they behave. Now, Marshman goes forward to say that there was a time that parties behaved, and even it's not in past, but that at some point parties behave as POP. It doesn't matter which year or which duration are we in. So he's saying that even in modern days, there are parties that sometimes they perform or they behave like the POP does. All right. And parties may behave that way because of sometimes the leadership. Don't forget, the leadership is not constant. We knew that MPP was under, President Kufuor. Over time, it came to the hand of President Nana Akufo-Addo. Now, when he's done with his term, whether it's 4 or 8 years, the leadership would definitely be under somebody else. So according to Liz Management, sometimes under some leadership, a product-oriented party would move to a market-oriented party because of the leader's approach to leading. Or it could move from MOP, which is market-oriented party, to a POP, to a product-oriented party. We saw that evidence at the exit of, Prime Minister Tony Blair. Blair's labor was very much new labor, was very much modernity, was very much, let's consider the people, let's listen to what the people want and take over. Now, when the party came into the hands of Gordon Brown, of course, same new labor agenda. But when Gordon Brown was exiting, there was a belief that the new labor way of doing things has drifted a lot of followers or labor's core base away. And they wanted to shift to the left again because they had come too far to the left of center. So when the, Ed Miliband took over, there was a lot of talk about going back to the Red Labor days. So they used to call him Red Ed, all right? Very dogmatic, very, proper party people determining and dictating what must be the policy. Now, Liz Management says that parties can move from POP to SOP, and the SOP is about sales-oriented organizations where they will master the art of creating the product, but their strength is also in selling the product. So they have much more compelling capability in distribution and in sales. So it doesn't matter the product quality. And sales-oriented organization is to actually perfect the art of selling. And the art of selling is more of a propaganda, all right? How do you push the product into the throats of the people? So for an SOP, they are not so much careful or pay attention to product and how it was delivered. It's about, are we having the capability to drive this product for the customer to buy and to buy more of it? That's where the SOPs actually focus attention to sales and driving of sales. The same way, Liz Management says that political parties have perfected the art of communication, the art of persuasion. And so they will develop policies based on what their understanding is and use technology, for example, modern communication gadgets, modern communication strategies, and modern communication approaches to make sure that they could convince the voters that their proposition is the best, and as a result, they should buy it. Again, it doesn't matter the spectrum, the year spectrum. It could be olden days or it could be modern current day. Political party can be an SOP, all right? Perfecting the art of selling and distribution, making sure that they can persuade people to buy them. And then the last on that comprehensive political marketing framework is what we call the MOP, the market-oriented party. And Liz Management says that the market-oriented party is the one that, as the name suggests, had come to understand that at the center of profitability is the needs of the customer. And so profitability is as a consequence of satisfying the customer's need. Without that, you will not be profitable. So that concept is what guides a market-oriented political party to say that for you to win the vote, you must understand what the people want in terms of price, in terms of promotion, in terms of distribution, in terms of the product itself. You must understand how they want it, when they want it, and be able to use that understanding in creating the political product or the political brand. And tell them that this is what you said you wanted. This is what we have been able to produce as a result of that insight you told us. And when a party is MOP, there's a congruence between the voter and the party characteristics because the party had taken time to understand what the voter wants and to develop that accordingly. Is that understandable here? Any questions or addition? The POP, the SOP, and the MOP theories. Any question? Or is it, are you clear on that?
Hi, Doc.
Yeah.
Doc, I don't seem to appreciate so much about the SOP. If you could come again on that. The POP and MOP is very clear for me. The SOP don't seem to settle so well for me. If you could
okay.
come back again.
So the SOP is like, I'll give you a typical example. Remember when, you know, there was a time that insurance had a very bad image, that people were not prepared to buy insurance. Those days, Ghana.
Okay.
You remember?
Yeah.
That people thought that insurance, even when you have an issue, they will use a lot of excuses and deny you your payment. So the attitude towards insurance was terrible. And there were just, I don't know, but one player or just a few players in the industry. There came Metropolitan Insurance. I hope some of you, I mean, all of you can relate to this story. When Metropolitan Insurance came into the country, I think it was local, you know, investors, I mean, local entrepreneurs that said that. I'm not quite sure about the ownership. But Metropolitan Insurance did something different. They recruited a lot of young people. And I remember my own mates from St. Augustine's College when we finished school were working for Metropolitan Insurance. They recruited so many people from community bases and then asked them to move into house by house to sell insurance. Now, because of that distribution ability, Metropolitan Insurance was able to bring insurance to people's doorstep. In fact, insurance became a common commodity that you could, because every day people are passing. Now, the idea of the SOP or the sales-oriented party is that the sales-oriented party identifies its strength in its selling ability. That is, how much good talk can I give you in order that I will be able to persuade you? Are you with me?
Okay.
Yeah. So they prefer the art of communication, all right, to sell whatever product they have. So the product development is very much their intuition and their expertise. So the product, even if it doesn't fit your need, how do I still convince you or persuade you to buy? Are you with me?
Okay. Okay.
That's sales oriented.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's clear.
Okay. Anyone, are you guys all on board?
Yes, Doc.
Okay. Now, so the SOP, as we have said, explains the way in which parties and other political entities behave, and it is in response to social and technological change, obviously changing consumer needs, etc., the fits, you know, of the lifestyle. So these orientations have actually come about as a result of changes in society broadly, all right? And these are the things that we say. So a market-oriented party as a response to the disappearance of the cleavage. Now, so let's move into why the changes and how does a market-oriented party came about. Now, over time, we said that there had been a disappearance of traditional cleavages. What are these traditional cleavages? One, the family, which is the unit of analysis for a society. Currently, as we speak, most of us have moved out of our family originating family places, isn't it? So we moved out of our fathers' homes. We moved out of our communities, and now we live in a more distant places like Accra. Now, what does that mean to you? It means that you are no longer under the care and the habits, the practices of the family home. So if in the past, Sunday, your mom, your dad, everybody else will be put in a car and be driven to the worship place whether it's a mosque or it's a church, all right? You're driven there. Now, because of the separation with the family, you probably would choose to stay home on that day, whether Friday or Saturday. Why? Because there is no supervisory, character to actually say that you have to get up and go to, the religious place. All right. The same way, because of the disappearance of the clan, of the family settings, people are no longer under the compulsion to vote the way their parents did. All right. People now at liberty to choose who they think fits their needs. And so you couldn't actually say that you could analyze the vote according to the family, although we still can do it, but some of the fundamental reasons or fundamental factors that would be considered in the analysis perhaps have changed. Yeah. And that's why you see a young person at the age of 18, they will tell you, my dad is NDC, but I'm not an NDC. I vote differently. So the disappearance of those cleavages, the family, the clan systems, the religious groups, all right, so many other things are actually leading to independent minds, which the party must now identify and actually attract. In those days, you will see a whole clan, a whole family, and they vote left or they vote right, and consistently. It's no longer there. All right. Any questions or contribution?
Job,
Yeah.
that clan system example you gave, is it applicable to Ghana and for that matter, Africa or world at large in terms of politics?
I think it's a geopolitical changes.
Okay.
Now, Kofi, can you give us an insight from party perspective? Do you guys see that, or do you guys see it differently? Do you think there is a disappearance of tradition, family tradition, where the families consistently vote MPP, NDC over time? Of course, there are exceptions, but generally, how do you guys perceive it?
I think if there's been any division at all, it hasn't been much. What is changing things now is the new media, new consumer trends, what the youth are doing on social media. The youth are a bit detached from their parents now. I mean, if I'm in Konongo, in my mom or my dad's home in Konongo, we talk MPP. I remember in the 90s, my dad used to buy Free Press, Chronicle, Independent, and those things. We discuss MPP matters. Now, even in 1992, I was just about 11 years old. I accompanied my dad to, catch a glimpse of him. But imagine maybe my dad's child who is younger now, he may even be in Accra now, and that connection may not be there now.
Yeah.
So the changing society, social media, and peer pressure within the circles of the youth is changing some of these things.
Yeah.
But in the 90s, it was 100% tradition.
Yeah.
MPP, we are MPP, we are this, we are this. But now you could get a youth who is of a different party or even apolitical, whereas his parents are very political. And I remember when we were in TESCON in the early 2000s at Kenya University, for instance, we had children of ministers who didn't know anything about politics.
Yeah.
Because they were the bees who were enjoying the largesse of their parents, driving cars on campus and enjoying all what comes with political power and status and all that. But these guys were a bit disconnected from their parents because of their busy schedules as politicians and all that. So I think it's changing a bit, even though the division isn't much. But new consumer trends, fashion, social media, and other new media factors are changing how we hold on to the traditions, the political traditions of our families. I think it's changing a bit.
That's correct. And even in situations where people still hold on to their family lineage of political connectivity, you see that the loyalty is fragile. All right. That
Exactly.
that person could even be swayed if they see an alternative compelling proposition.
Doc, imagine Senator had to register to vote only when she was interested in contesting.
That's correct.
This is a former president. His dad was president for almost 20 years.
Yeah. And
this was the first time she was registered.
Yeah.
She never registered to vote. So what kind of conversations would they have?
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised that her other siblings are still apathetic.
They still don't vote. Even now that their parents are not even leading political parties, even when they were not voting. So you can imagine.
Yeah.
And this is because of maybe some lifestyles she will pick at GIS, her mates, going on vacations, trying to fly the helicopter. They're interested in other things, either than the politics which their parents took. So things are changing.
That's correct.
Doc, you see, this aspect that Kofi just mentioned is sometimes what beats my thinking and my thoughts so much about the youth and our involvement in politics.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes I think so much about it. Just the example Kofi cited. Mm-hmm. Most of these, our frontline top politicians, their words are not involved in the day-to-day running around of what most of the youth does. And at the end of the day, like Kofi said, if their parents wins elections or they become the big men, they enjoy all the goodies. Yeah. And yet most of the people who run around to have supported and do all these things, most of them will still come around languishing and wishing for jobs and so forth and so on. Yeah. What accounts for that? Why is it that their own words don't come to the front line? I'm thinking,
that's what we're discussing. You see, you can't legislate for that. But you see, the key is about, as we are talking about. Let me move to that slide. The key is about this one: social disconnection. All right, the changes in the social settings. All right. Now, remember that when their dads were actively in the political system, sometimes they had socially migrated, all right? So the person at their youthful days were with their parents in a compound house, all right? Now, certainly, when you find yourself in a compound, and that's why a lot of, poor people, or so to speak, people under the bottom of the pyramid, majority of them tend to be center-left, all right, socialist, because the circumstances, the economic circumstances actually seep into the ideological positioning. And so you find that this man, when they were actively in the grounds of politics, was perhaps a poor person. He lives in a compound house. That's where she gave birth to, or he gave birth to the children. Over time, as Kofi was saying, when they start to experience the largesse of government, if they happen to be in government, remember, he's going to move from the compound house to estates or to their own house. By that time, the socialization that he had with the compound house, which perhaps made him very much politically connected, whether to the left or to the right, that socialization is changing because he's moved into an estate or private house. By the time the children are grown up, they are having a completely different socialization. As Kofi said, they are being flown abroad, they are socializing with other people. That largesse that this man is enjoying is now influencing a different lifestyle. So this young person of this man does not see politics as the answer to their situations, because they are not in a struggling situation. They are actually rather now affluent, so may not see the need for political discourse. Mind you, there's a theory that, in fact, where there is development, or in the developed world, political participation, in fact, voter turnout is sometimes less than 50. Why? Because they don't need a political party to solve their problems for them. In fact, if you go to England, majority of people today do not know who their their prime minister is. You can ask somebody, I'm telling you, they're going to tell you Margaret Thatcher. Or some people, and that would be even an exaggeration because she's dead or gone. But some people may even think that it's still Tony Blair who is a prime minister, because the systems are working, and so they don't think that it is up to a prime minister, a politician, or a political party that will make them it. So the assumption, one of the theories, is that in countries where there is a high propensity of political participation, it means that they are economically poor. And so people lurch on the political party, hoping that their times will change. And similar attribution has been made to why do people go to church plenty these days. A lot of people are in the church. Perhaps it is not only because, or it is not because they want to go to heaven, but because they have a lot of circumstances, challenges, that they couldn't actually get help from the political system. And so they're looking to higher power for those solutions. I don't know whether I'm making sense. Yeah? Abdul? Hello, are you guys there?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Abdul, does it make sense to you?
Very well, Doc. I'm clear. I'm clear
Yeah,
now.
so that's why, Kofi made reference to that. Some of these people have deviated because obviously they've moved. We call it social, sociological migration, all right? Social migration. So there's been migration, from their previous economic status, or their societal status, to a different kind of status, all right? And so that could actually affect people's connectivity to political parties. Any questions or contribution? All right. Again, when we look at the political strategy, when we look at the social sector, the changes in the social sector as we've been talking about, including the changes in consumer behavior, and the last time of voter behavior, last time I was telling you that the voter is no longer a citizen, but the voter is now a consumer. I remember we discussed that theory here, right? Did we discuss it? Hello?
Look, I don't think so.
We haven't discussed. Didn't we discuss the shift from the citizens to the consumer by the voter? When we were discussing this. Okay. So from the political marketing perspective, all right, there is the understanding that the voter is no longer a citizen, but a consumer. And the reason why that understanding is that if you look at the citizen and the definition of who is a citizen, it's actually about someone who owes allegiance to the state, i.e., who is responsible to the state and the state is responsible to them, vice versa, all right? And then the citizen is the one who actually recognizes their rights and demands their rights from the state. So if they are responsible to the state, they also demand their right from the state, all right? And so that's the citizen. Now, the voter as a citizen means that for the voter or for the person to exercise their civic responsibility, they must understand what is going on in the country, all right? Which means that the voter as a citizen is mandated to actually listen to the president anytime the president is speaking or wherever the president is speaking. In the morning, the voter as a citizen is supposed to actually read the news to appreciate what are some of the ongoings or the things that are going on in the country, all right? Now, if you look at the current voter now, is that a behavior? No. Because the current voter is exposed to choices, and so do not see, the need to actually listen to the president as one of their responsibilities. In fact, there is a repertoire, or there is a availability of so many media outlets, media channels, that even if the president is speaking on, GBC, most voters do not even see the need to listen to the president. All right, they have choices. And so we're saying that because of the existence of choice, or the emergence of choice, which has made the voter not accustomed to, or not obligatory to, some of these, national issues, means that the voter has now changed from a citizen to a consumer. Why? Because consumer is the one that actually follows choice that actually has some connection with their needs. Are you with me? So the consumer, or the voter as a consumer, would be watching Ekuma Mamazimbi at some point when the president is talking. He doesn't see the need to listen to the president, but he follows what interests them, which is Mamazimbi. So that means that if you understand the voter as a citizen has shifted to the voter as a consumer, you will not actually think that once you say president is speaking, people would listen to them. Because you will now think that, where is the voter now? Which of the channels is the voter watching? At what time does the voter watch those channels? And make sure that as the president is speaking, the president is also transmitted from the platforms that the voter as a consumer is using. And that's why we now even use social media to stream the president's appearance, but not restricted to only national television, as in GBC. Am I clear on this?
Yes, Doc.
Okay. So that's the theory of the transition of the voter as a citizen to the voter as a consumer. I think it's 9:30 now, 7:30, 8:30 now. And that's what? Is it 2 hours? Do we continue, or you guys are a little bit tired?
Oh, boss, let's postpone to next later.
Okay. So we'll we'll continue the next meeting. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Doc.
That's all right, Kofi. I've put some assignment on the page.
The case study.
Yeah, the case study. Please read it.
Okay.
And then perhaps we can decide that we'll do it in a group, or individual. Whenever you've read it, let me know so that we'll discuss what we'll do. Yeah.
All right, Doc.
Okay, sir.
We'll read it.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Okay. Samuel, how are you?
Fine, Doc.
Excellent. Good to see you.